Well, welcome back, class, COM 301 students, and this is another in our continuing series of me lecturing to a room of empty seats during our COVID shelter in place. So anyway, this is our second assignment, and I think one of the most opportunities to be creative. I really get excited about this assignment because it shows me what kind of literature you listen or read and possibly listen to. I want to introduce the dramatic reading, and the dramatic reading is worth 15 points, and go over the goals here. First of all, this is a manuscript delivery, and by now you should have read the delivery chapter, and you know that the manuscript delivery is where all the words are in a script in front of you, okay? So the challenge with the manuscript delivery is to make eye contact. A lot of times people get a little bit too bound to it and too secure and just in their reading, and it again turns public speaking into public reading, which is obviously not our goal. So I want to know if you're going to be able to make eye contact. Vocal variety is key. So many times in the past couple decades that I've taught this subject, I've mentioned that people need to have vocal variety where they are using a variety of notes in their voice. If you think of music, I know some of you are musicians, that we're not as interested to listen to a monotone song, one note or two notes, whereas we want to hear a melody, right? Most of us want to hear a variety of notes, and it's the same concept when it comes to speaking, that we don't want to hear the speech that sounds like this, that you probably had many instructors deliver in a way. I know that when I've observed new instructors, sometimes they maybe are a little nervous and they just tend to speak this way. I think that stereotypically some men are socialized to not show emotion, to be cool, calm, collected, and speak in a measured fashion, which can be really difficult to listen to, okay? So I want you to pay attention to vocal variety, as well as body language. You're not going to be presenting behind a lectern or podium. I'll want you to speak in front of the camera with just your notes and you. So you'll use body language to emote, you'll use body language to communicate, and those are basically our delivery goals. It's also an argument. It says argument here. And what I mean by that is you're going to have a claim or a theme. In an essay we call it a thesis. In this assignment, this speech, we call it a theme. Okay, what's the point? At the end of your speech, I really need to know what your point was. Okay? And that theme can be a variety of themes. When we talk about themes, it can be we're really trying to relate to the human experience. It could be, obviously people like to write about love or different kinds of love, about love of family, love of dogs, love of food. I've heard people speak about love of different kinds of beer, love of, music. And so you can obviously understand that that's an important theme and very common one. But there's a variety I've heard over the years. People have talked about their themes being anxious, being nervous, okay, and how they deal with the anxiety and the nervousness. People have written about and spoke about themes of being too envious, or themes of being backstabbed, of being cheated on. Okay, there's so many different pieces of literature that write about the theme of betrayal. Okay. Folks have written, I had one person write about being bored. He felt like his life was boring, and he wrote a poem about how boring his life was. School was boring, his work was boring, home life was boring. He was a very uninspired guy. So you get the idea, I hope, that themes can be whatever speaks to you, okay, through literature. Now, it says qualitative evidence, and qualitative basically means non-numeric, and in this case, you're supporting your theme through literature, which we define as poetry, prose, drama, or lyric. So poetry Poetry can be, old school poetry that some people will look at, Edgar Allan Poe, to more slam poetry. If you're interested in spoken word poetry, you can use spoken word poetry. Just be aware in your delivery to deliver it slowly enough so folks can comprehend what you're saying, okay? Prose is short stories. So sometimes one of the easiest ways to accomplish this assignment is through using children's books, okay? Sometimes people have used Dr. Seuss, pretty common. For instance, Green Eggs and Ham. Did you know that there's a theme to Green Eggs and Ham? What do you think the theme to Green Eggs and Ham would be? Okay, I've heard the theme be identified as, hey, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. You may like the experience, right? Don't be afraid to try something new. Be open-minded. These are all kinds of themes. You didn't realize that Green Eggs and Ham was so deep, right? So they've used that, in terms of short story. Okay, drama can be plays or film or television. Okay, I've heard monologues from Game of Thrones. I've heard, Les Mis. I remember one from, it was a scene from Cosette and Marius. So drama doesn't have to be a movie. It can be from a play. It can be from television as well. And of course, lyrics. Probably the most common way that this assignment is completed is through lyrics, because more people listen to music than read poetry, is my guess. But anyway, lyrics from various songs have been used over the years. So you can use, and I'm going to shift to this kind of the way to organize the dramatic reading. You can use one poem, one song if it's long enough. This speech needs to be 3 to 5 minutes long. So really what you're going to want to do is have your poetry, prose, drama, or lyrics be at least 3 minutes long. That's the only way you'll lose points with time, is if you're short of 3 minutes, okay? So sometimes people will use one really long poem. So for instance, The Raven, okay? If you're familiar with The Raven, Edgar Allan Poe. I mentioned Cosette and Marius, the scene from Les Mis. It was just one scene. It was at least 3 minutes long. Other examples, if you're a fan of Eminem back in the day, he wrote a song and sang it about Stan, who was his #1 fan, if you're familiar with it. He's about an overzealous fan, essentially, and it was a really long, interesting rap. And then, more recently, I've heard songs, Humble, DNA, The Recipe, okay? These have all been used in one song. However, and I'm not saying that you would break these up. So Kendrick Lamar wrote a song called Humble, DNA, and The Recipe, and there's been a lot of Kendrick Lamar fans coming through the class where they just used one song, okay? Now, you can break it up. And you also can use a combination. So I had a student who, once upon a time, this is maybe 2 decades ago, he was a senior at UC Davis. He was hanging out in the wrong place, the wrong people, at the wrong time, and ended up getting shot. He was in a coma for a few days. And when part of his recovery was to come to Sacramento City College, and he came to our speech lab. We worked with him to help him regain his speech. He was also working in physical therapy. He actually joined the speech and debate team at the time I was coaching. And what he did was he developed a speech called, he basically said, he called it Coma, and what it was like to be in a coma. And what he did was he had 3 songs, one by Tupac. Actually, it was a poem by Tupac, another by Guns N' Roses, and the last by Metallica. And he so you can use a combination of poetry, prose, drama, or lyrics, because that's what this gentleman did, okay? And Tupac was the first section, and then he introduced the Guns N' Roses song, and then the Metallica song, okay? And so you can, if you want, if the last line of the Tupac song is similar to the first line of the Guns N' Roses song, you can just let it flow right together. Or you can signpost it and say, welcome to the jungle, Guns N' Roses. I can't remember if that was the song or not, but I know that's a Guns N' Roses song, okay? And then same thing here. If the last line of the Guns N' Roses song is similar to the first line of the Metallica song, then you can just flow right into it. It makes it sound like it's one piece, but then of course you have three different artists, okay? So you can do it either way. You can signpost each one. Once you get to Metallica, you might say, Enter Sandman, Metallica, right? And then you finish your piece, okay? So you can break it up. I've had as many as, for instance, this last example, I remember a student gave a speech about the 5 or the 4 stages of love, in terms of the development of it. The first was physical attraction, and she used Khalees's Milkshake, if you're familiar with that song, My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard, etc. It's always embarrassing when I say that, but that's really the physical attraction portion of the stage. Finished with Commitment, and it was Shania Twain's Still the One, okay, if you're familiar with that song. So, the easiest way to do it is one prose. Sometimes, if you sit here and you recite Green Eggs and Ham, Dr. Seuss book, or Oh, the Places You'll Go. Okay, some of you may have gotten that book for graduation about adventuring out into the world. So that's really the structure of the body. I want to address the beginning of the speech. I mentioned in the bag speech that I really want you to start with gaining our attention. So the teaser is what we call it in the dramatic reading, and it uses literature. So it would use a stanza of The Raven, or just a few lines from DNA, or whatever it is that gains our attention immediately. Okay, and so generally the teaser is about 10 to 15 seconds long, so it's more than just asking a question. It's reciting literature in an interesting fashion, hopefully, in an attention-getting fashion. And then what you'll do is move to the introduction. So if this is about 10 to 15 seconds long, this is going to be approximately 30 seconds long, okay? Approximately 30 seconds long. And there's 3 goals to the introduction. You want to establish a theme, okay? And you'd want it to sound something like, a lot of times people will define the term. And then, so for instance, Alex, who gave the speech about being in a coma, his theme sounded something like, many of us have been familiar with the term comatose, or to be in a coma. For me, it was very real. I was in a coma for a number of days. But many of us haven't really thought about what it means to be in a coma in a different context. So for instance, some of us can be comatose if we don't take part in the political system and we let other people decide laws for us. We can be comatose because we can't get out of bed after a breakup, okay? Or because we're dealing with depression and anxiety. And so there's a variety of ways that we can feel comatose. So today we're going to highlight this notion of being in a coma. Okay, so I've established a theme, and now I've related the theme to the audience so that it kind of expands the definition a little bit. And now I'm going to give credit to the author and the artist. So through the words of Tupac Shakur, Guns N' Roses, and Metallica, we highlight what it feels like to be in a coma. Okay? So, you have the teaser, the introduction, and when you get through that, you should be approximately 40 to 45 seconds into your speech. Okay? If the body is 3 minutes, you know that you're going to be within the 3 to 5 minute range. So this is what's key. It absolutely should be 3 minutes long. And one thing I do want to caution you about is the repetition. I know a lot of you will use songs, and sometimes the songs repeat, and it gets a little bit monotonous. So for instance, I remember one time there was I think it's Justin Bieber, one of the Justins. It was about baby, 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 and he said baby so many times, and the person reciting that song got up here and was baby, 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 and it just got to be a little monotonous. So edit it, feel free to edit this material, okay? Please do not change the words, but you can take some out. You don't have to say all of the lyrics over and over and over, okay? You want to change the terminology. So for instance, especially the pronouns, change the pronouns, okay? Feel free. Also, I'd really because of the history of the N-word, I don't want you to use it. So most of the time people change it to brother, okay? So instead of the N-word, just change it to brother, okay? Sometimes I think that there's a lot of profanity, specifically if you're going to use some of Kendrick Lamar stuff, and a lot of not just rap, but songs in general, there's profanity. So let us know ahead of time that, your speech is going to contain some profanity, okay? If you are an audience member who doesn't want to hear it, you don't have to review this particular video, okay? And so that's what I'd like you to do in the subject line. Hey, some profanity. Just let us know, okay? So that's really what I want you to stay away from, okay? Obviously, I'd really like you to not include any racist, sexist, heterosexist kinds of language. So that's where I draw the line there. So moving on, and I'm hoping you're going to have some questions for me via email or Zoom. I know this is a very kind of more abstract speech than some of the others, but I also have provided at least 2 or 3 examples for you to watch and grade and ask questions about. And so I'm not just going to, expect you to do this after not seeing any student examples. That's definitely the way I like to teach, is to show you numerous examples before I expect you to present a speech. Okay? So, moving on, let us look at delivery. It should be a manuscript, okay? And from that manuscript, I'm going to expect you to make some eye contact. And one way, I think one of the best ways I can explain eye contact and emphasize the consistency of eye contact is through a rhythm, okay? And the best way I think I explained this, I was driving with one of my sons the other day, and he's just learning to drive. And as he's driving down the street, he notices someone who looks kind of nice to him, turns and looks a little too long, especially for a brand new driver, okay? And so the rhythm is, as he's driving by, you could look 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, very nice, back on the road, okay? That's what it needs to be, and that's what I was explaining to him. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, take a glance, back on the road, all right? And that's what it is for this speech, okay? And the speeches throughout this semester is, I want you to peek at your notes in your manuscript or your note cards. If you're peeking at them, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, back on the road. The road is the audience, okay? So I'll count that in my head. 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, back on the audience. Okay? 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, back on the audience. It's what you should have learned in your driver's training class. Hopefully you're not texting and doing the 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5. I do see some drivers do that. Hopefully, nobody in this class, of course. But anyway, that's my discussion about eye contact, how I count consistent eye contact, okay? How in terms of my scoring, okay? The way I grade it, I should say. So, vocal variety, we've talked about that. Are you making it sound interesting with your voice, because really that's the key. It's one of the main points. Out of the 15 points, 3 points comes from vocal variety. So when you play your recording back and you sound monotone like this and you're trying to sound like you're trying to put us to sleep, do me a favor, try to use multiple tones in your delivery, and it might just be a new habit you're going to have to start, but please try not to be that speaker that puts the audience to sleep just with the monotone speaking. Volume and rate, I got to hear you, and you have to speak slowly enough for us to comprehend, okay? I want to make sure you're not speaking too fast. Those of you spoken word artists, those of you rappers who, rap, those of you mumble rappers, it's not time for you to get up and, get your hand going and start to rap in a way that doesn't really help your delivery and your clarity. It's time for you to let the words be known. It's time for you to, a lot of times the audience will say, man, I didn't even know. I've listened to that song for years. I didn't know that, that was the line, because it's for the first time you're speaking the line with clarity. So that's something I'll focus on. Using a binder. Now, this is something that I would recommend that you do. If it's too tricky for you, it's not a big deal. But the idea is that you use a binder with a manuscript on pages, and you're glancing down at the manuscript and then up to make, obviously making eye contact. And the binder is really symbolic. It pays homage or homage to the artist, okay? So for instance, let me pull the way to organize the speech back. The teaser is literature, so it's somebody else's words, okay? And when it's somebody else's words, the binder is open. And you're interpreting someone else's words for the audience. Now, the introduction is written by you, okay? You've established the theme. You're relating the theme to the audience. You're giving credit to the artists or authors, okay? And so then it closes, because obviously it's symbolic of you using your own words. Now, a lot of times students will put a little, the introduction here and tape it. That's fine, okay? But again, this is kind of like citing sources. You are showing that this is your work, and then to the body, paying homage to, the artists, the authors, and it's open, and you're reciting. Now, I would like for you to try, if you're going to use a binder, to still use gestures. Don't stand here and hold it as if you're gripping it, holding on for dear life, okay? And do your best to gesture as well. So sometimes you can use the folders. It's easier to hold, and that way, it's much lighter if that's a problem. Don't use the 5 subject binders. I've seen them, fall off. All the papers fall off or fall out in front of the audience. So that's my recommendation. If you don't feel comfortable using a binder at all, you don't have to. I'm not going to take points away for that. But that is, the way that historically you paid homage to the authors, as I mentioned. That's what this assignment is about. Before television, before media, before radio, people told stories to each other in an interesting way. And that's what you're practicing here, okay? And that's why I included this assignment. So anyway, if you have any questions, and I'm sure you do, I really hope I get some emails from you. I really hope you zoom into my office hours, and definitely look at the students' sample speeches, and there's a few posts that I'll want you to grade these student sample speeches, and then I think it'll be more clarity. But please ask me questions if you have them, okay? Have a good day. Thanks a lot.